Day 255 of the war in Gaza, and the IDF continues the fight deep in Rafah against Hamas, despite difficult losses in the past 24 hours, with 12 soldiers being killed in combat. The IDF has also announced new strategic pauses in fighting to enable more humanitarian aid to get to Gazans. In addition to the military front, earlier today, Prime Minister Netanyahu dissolved the war cabinet, claiming that after the departure of Benny Gantz from the coalition, there is no longer a need for such a cabinet. Let's take a look at the latest from the war in Gaza. As Israel is still reeling from the loss of 12 soldiers in the past 24 hours, IDF Southern Command Chief Major General Yaron Finkelman said that fighting in Rafah will continue until Hamas is defeated, despite heavy losses. 8 IDF soldiers were killed in a deadly explosion in Rafah inside an armored combat engineering vehicle yesterday, and the IDF announced the deaths of 4 additional soldiers who fell in combat in the past day. On Sunday, the IDF also began a new strategic humanitarian pause in fighting from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily to help facilitate the passage of aid through a humanitarian route. The route, approximately 10 kilometers, extends from the Kerem Shalom crossing to the Salahuddin Road and northwards. The decision comes following discussions between international organizations and the UN over the availability of humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip. Kogat, the defense ministry body responsible for civil activities in Gaza, said on Sunday that more than 1,000 aid trucks were waiting to be collected from the Gazan side of the Kerem Shalom crossing, but only 92 were collected by UN aid agencies throughout the day. The move to pause fighting during the daytime was harshly condemned by far-right members of the Israeli government. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir said that whoever decided on such a policy is a fool who should not remain in his position, while Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich called the move delusional. The core of the criticism focused on the fact that some of the humanitarian aid going into Gaza has been stolen by Hamas and used by the terrorists themselves, not the people. There have also been reports of Hamas reselling aid at exorbitant prices to the Palestinian people. Prime Minister Netanyahu also condemned the move, but the IDF stated the decision was in line with his instructions and clarified that there is no cessation of operations in Gaza. Skirmishes between Israel and Hezbollah continue today, with more rockets being fired from Lebanon into Israel and Israel responding. Several hours ago, the IDF also took out a senior Hezbollah commander in Lebanon. Top U.S. envoy is in the country in hopes of bringing the temperature down. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has the story.
Amos Hochstein, American envoy and senior advisor to the U.S. president, arrived in Israel on Monday to help prevent escalating tensions with Hezbollah from spiraling into a full-scale war. Attacks against Israel by the terrorist organization have stepped up in recent weeks, igniting Israel's northern border in flames. IDF spokesman Daniel Hagari said Sunday evening that Hezbollah's increasing aggression is bringing Israel to the brink of what could be a wider escalation, one that could have devastating consequences for Lebanon and the entire region.
Hezbollah is jeopardizing the future of Lebanon so that it can be a shield for Hamas, a shield for the Hamas terrorists, the one that murdered the elderly, raped women, burned children, and kidnapped Jews, Muslims, and Christians during their massacre on October 7th.
Hagari said that since Hezbollah decided to join the war that Hamas started on October 7th, Hezbollah has fired over 5,000 rockets, anti-tank missiles, and explosive UAVs from Lebanon at Israeli families, homes, and communities, and that the situation could not be tolerated for much longer.
When we say that we will not let October 7th happen again on any one of our borders, we mean it. Israel will take the necessary measures to protect its civilians.
Early Monday, the IDF successfully intercepted a suspicious aerial target that crossed from Lebanon into the maritime space near Akko. The incident came only hours after the army said IAF fighter jets struck several Hezbollah terror targets in 4 locations in southern Lebanon, including terrorist infrastructure in the area of Shakra and Taibeh, as well as military structures in the areas of Mehabib and Kfar Kela. Well, as the IDF bravely forges ahead in Gaza, the northern front, as mentioned, is heating up. The Americans, in an attempt to avoid a full-scale war, are taking steps to de-escalate the conflict. But is the Islamic Republic-backed terror group Hezbollah even interested in de-escalation?
Here to discuss the potential of diplomatic de-escalation is Israeli Special Envoy from the Foreign Ministry, Fleur Hassan Nahum. Fleur, thank you so much for joining us as always. Let's start with this visit from Amos Hochstein. Do you see this as having any significant impact on the war in the north?
Well, Amos Hochstein has been trying for the last 7 months to de-escalate. You could say it's been successful. I mean, we haven't had a full-out war, but many people would say we're already at war with the north. When you have 60,000 evacuees not in their homes, for the first time in Israel's military history, a buffer zone within our country rather than in enemy territory, and with rockets killing people every single day, I think many could argue that we're already at war. And those diplomatic efforts have failed.
Now, Hezbollah has fired over 5,000 projectiles. As you mentioned, we kind of already are in a state of war. Tens of thousands of Israelis are refugees in their own country for 8 months and counting. Is there any kind of de-escalation that could, in theory, restore security for these Israelis who have been kicked out of their homes for months?
The only thing we could really do is ensure that the buffer zone is on their territory and not on our territory. So it used to be, after the last war, behind the Litani River. That was supposed to be a ceasefire agreement. A lot of people talk about ceasefire agreements. Another ceasefire agreement with a hostile enemy that has been broken. They have UN forces there that were completely useless, and Hezbollah crept towards our border to the point that now the 10-kilometer buffer zone is within our country. And that's what's causing all the evacuees. And so we need to get back to the point of making the north habitable, livable. Otherwise, for Israel, this is a real strategic loss and a big threat.
Now, on the northern front, there's been a major increase in these hostilities, but international bodies who are supposed to keep Hezbollah in line have not really done anything, speaking primarily, of course, about UNIFIL here. Why aren't we seeing more international pressure on Hezbollah, given it was Hezbollah who began these hostilities?
Well, this is the story of our lives, right, Emily? That we have the pressure being put on the country fighting for liberty and freedom, the only country that is a democracy with a rule of law, the only country that basically just defends itself and doesn't start aggressive wars. We see it in Hamas. We see how the pressure, instead of being on Qatar and on the Islamic Republic, the enablers of Hamas and Hezbollah, you see that the pressure is on Israel. It's the world turned upside down. And what all that does is empower and embolden the terrorists.
Now, we are almost out of time, but I just wanted to get your take really quickly on this daytime humanitarian pause in Gaza. Some officials have criticized this as Hamas has taken some of that aid that's gone through. Others say it's much needed for helping the Palestinian people. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I believe that we always have to act within international law and do what we need to do, because that's what makes the difference. We are people who believe in law, we have morals, we have ethics, and if this is going to help innocent people get food that their own leadership is preventing them from getting, then we should do it. Secondly, the whole world has different standards for us. That you can call anti-Semitism, and you can call whatever you want. And because there are different standards, then we have to act in higher standards. And that is the story of Israel. And so we will do what we need to do to keep the international law, to facilitate that humanitarian aid, and to be above our very brutal and barbaric enemies that put their own civilians in harm's way.
Well put. Well, as always, thank you so much for your time, Fleur.
Thanks, Emily.
Attacks by Yemen's Houthis continued overnight Sunday. This time, they claimed to attack 3 vessels, including an American destroyer. More in this report.
Yemen's Houthis claimed they had attacked 2 civilian ships and an American destroyer in the Red Sea and Arabian Sea overnight Sunday. This move is part of their ongoing effort to disrupt shipping as a show of support for Palestinians in Gaza. The Houthi military spokesperson stated that the group fired ballistic missiles at the American destroyer, naval missiles at a ship named Captain Paris, and drones at a ship called Happy Condor. It remains unclear if any of the targets were struck. Earlier on Sunday, the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations reported that a vessel located 40 nautical miles south of Yemen's Al-Mukha had experienced 2 nearby explosions. The ship and its crew were unharmed and continued their journey, though the ship was not identified. The Houthis, who align with Iran and control Yemen's capital and many populated areas, have carried out numerous attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea since November. These attacks have disrupted global trade by forcing ships to reroute away from the Suez Canal and have prompted retaliatory strikes from the U.S. and the United Kingdom.
Israel's security cabinet is taking action to push back against unilateral Palestinian statehood through a series of policies. This move comes as Ireland, Spain, Slovenia, and Norway recognized the state of Palestine in the aftermath of the October 7th massacre and subsequent war in Gaza. Similarly, conversations continue with Saudi Arabia over a potential normalization agreement. Thus far, the Saudis have insisted on a Palestinian state as part of an agreement. Among the policies which the government intends to promote in response is strengthening settlements in the West Bank, as well as a series of punitive actions against the Palestinian Authority following its campaign against Israel in the international arena. Prime Minister Netanyahu instructed the cabinet to bring all the proposals to a vote at the next cabinet meeting, but specifics of the policies to be implemented were not immediately released. Any moves against Palestinian statehood are likely to increase tensions with the international community and the United States, which has promoted 2 states heavily and is attempting to facilitate a Saudi-Israel normalization agreement. And now, in a heartwarming display of international collaboration, Save a Child's Heart has launched its inaugural medical teaching mission to Rwanda, marking the beginning of a new partnership with the Rwandan Ministry of Health. Let's take a look.
In a heartwarming international effort, Save a Child's Heart embarked on its first medical teaching mission to Rwanda under a new agreement with the Rwandan Ministry of Health. The SACH medical team, consisting of Israeli volunteers from the Sylvan Adams Children's Hospital at Wolfson Medical Center in Holon, collaborated with local Rwandan and Ethiopian medical teams. Working 14-hour days, they successfully performed life-saving catheterization procedures on 22 children. Additionally, over 50 children were evaluated at a cardiology clinic by the combined Israel-Rwanda-Ethiopia cardiology team, showcasing a remarkable example of multinational teamwork and cooperation. Joining this mission were 2 medical fellows from Rwanda currently training in Israel, Dr. Jared Masago, a pediatric cardiologist, and Dr. Lise Montparis, a pediatric intensivist. A touching reunion was also part of the mission, bringing together 18 past patients from Rwanda who received treatment between 2007 and 2023. The reunion, attended by Israel's ambassador to Rwanda, highlighted the long-term impact of SACH's work. These former patients, now healthy adults in their 20s, shared their stories of successful recoveries and fulfilling lives. In a particularly emotional moment, the team welcomed back 9-year-old Luana, who returned from Israel after receiving life-saving surgery. Her homecoming in Kigali was a moving scene as her mother, aunts, and community members greeted her with overwhelming joy and gratitude.
What Save a Child's Heart is doing in Africa will be great, but for my country it's even more important that we will have the opportunity to treat children with heart condition locally without needing to transfer them elsewhere, to advance pediatric intensive care and to save more children.
And joining us now in studio is Simon Fisher, the Executive Director of Save a Child's Heart. Simon, thank you so much for being here. I would like to just start by asking you about this incredible mission to Rwanda. I mean, what inspired Save a Child's Heart to do this mission?
Yeah, Save a Child's Heart is all about the vision of one great individual, the late Dr. Ami Cohen, an American heart surgeon who made Aliyah to Israel at the beginning of the 90s. And his vision was to share knowledge and expertise with countries which lack the knowledge in the field of pediatric cardiac care. And he created Save a Child's Heart back in 1995 at the Wolfson Medical Center. To date, the organization has treated some 7,000 children from 70 countries around the world.
Wow, it's quite impressive. How did this collaboration between the Israelis and the Rwandans and Ethiopian medical teams as well, how did that come about and what challenges did you guys face?
What's actually very exciting about what happened 2 weeks ago in Rwanda, and I'll take you back 8 months ago. October 6, I was in Kigali signing a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Health of Rwanda, in the presence of the Israeli ambassador to Kigali and advice. And it was all about sharing knowledge, not only treating children suffering from heart disease, but putting together medical missions of Israeli doctors coming over to Rwanda and putting together a group of Rwandan doctors who would come to Israel and train. And we signed the MOU and came back to Israel. And practically everything else was history. October 7th, we found ourselves in a completely different reality.
How do you plan to build on the success of this mission and other similar missions that Save a Child's Heart has done? And, of course, how can individuals support the work that you're doing?
So, you know, 2 weeks ago was a very exciting time for Save a Child's Heart. Having been away for 8 months, we were in a very unique position to restart our program that we committed to the Rwandan Ministry of Health, to come to Rwanda, together with an Israeli medical team, 10 medical professionals from the Wolfson Medical Center, together with 2 Rwandan doctors training at the Wolfson Medical Center through Save a Child's Heart, and to launch the first catheterization mission. What was very special about the catheterization mission, in order to do catheterization, you have to have surgical backup. And very fortunately for Save a Child's Heart, the surgical backup at the King Faisal Hospital in Rwanda is led by Dr. Yayu Mekonnen, who's an Ethiopian heart surgeon, trained by Save a Child's Heart at Wolfson Medical Center some 7 or 8 years ago, who only recently relocated from Ethiopia to Rwanda to lead pediatric cardiac surgery in Rwanda. This is another wonderful opportunity that Save a Child's Heart has had to manifest how Israeli knowledge is shared throughout Africa, but most excitingly for us is the notion of South-to-South collaboration, seeing how different nationals from different African countries can work together to benefit Africa as a whole. And Save a Child's Heart, to a very large extent, has been a pioneer in this initiative. Save a Child's Heart activities couldn't actually happen if it wasn't for the tremendous support that Save a Child's Heart enjoys from supporters throughout the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. At an election event over the weekend, former U.S. President Donald Trump said he would make a missile defense system for America, similar to the one that Israel has. Trump's Iron Dome, he said, would improve the U.S. system and create more jobs. More from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
Former U.S. President and Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump has promised Americans that he will build a state-of-the-art missile defense shield akin to Israel's Iron Dome if he is reelected as president.
Biden's weakness and failure are putting us in grave danger as president. I will restore peace through strength. In my next term, we will build a great Iron Dome over our country like Israel has. A dome like has never been seen before, a state-of-the-art missile defense shield that will be entirely built in America and create jobs, jobs, jobs. It will be the greatest dome anywhere in the world.
Trump was speaking at the Turning Point Actions, the People's Convention, on Saturday in Detroit, Michigan. He was greeted with chants of happy birthday. The former president turned 78 on Friday. Trump is considered one of the most pro-Israel presidents in the history of the United States. He moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, recognized the Golan Heights, pulled out of the Iranian nuclear deal, and defunded UNRWA refugee organization, among other moves. His evangelical constituency, which put him into the White House the first time around, continues to be among the strongest supporters of Israel, according to all polls. On the other hand, President Joe Biden's support for Israel's war in Gaza has caused him no shortage of political troubles, especially among his younger, more progressive voters. In March, Trump stated he would have responded similarly to Israel after Hamas's attack on October 7th. However, he suggested that Israel, losing international support, should, quote-unquote, wrap up its conflict with the Islamic group in Gaza. Trump, unlike Biden, has also questioned the feasibility of a two-state solution. A poll released last week by a Palestinian think tank showed that Palestinians themselves are uninterested in a two-state option.
Well, iconic American comedian Jerry Seinfeld was heckled by anti-Israel protesters at his show in Australia last night. but wasted no time flipping the script on these activists. Let's take a look. American Jewish comedian Jerry Seinfeld is one of the most beloved comedians today, but not everyone was excited to see him this week. During his show in Australia, anti-Israel protesters stood up and began shouting at the comedian, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." Seinfeld's response, however, garnered massive applause from the audience.
Yes. We have a genius, ladies and gentlemen. He solved the Middle East. He solved it. It's the Jewish comedians. That's what we have to get. They're the ones doing everything.
Seinfeld continued to mock the protesters, cynically applauding their genius for attending a comedy show to spread their political ideas.
Middle East, 100% solved thanks to man at the Kudos Arena stopping Jew comedian. They stopped him, and everyone in the Middle East went, "Oh my God, let's just get along. We can't do that." Because I know there are problems here with indigenous Aboriginal people and the white people. They have problems here, so maybe to solve that, I will screw up Jim Jeffries in a show in New York.
Prior to the show, anti-Israel groups had defaced ads for the comedian's event in Australia and shared their intent to protest Seinfeld because he is, in their words, a big Zionist. It is unlikely they anticipated, however, that they themselves would be the center of the joke. And for more of Israel's booming innovation and tech, 4C Foods hosted an event bringing their cultivated fish to the public, while ILTV's Ariella Lachiani attended the event to see for herself.
Last week at the upscale Tel Aviv restaurant A, 4C Foods welcomed an intimate gathering of 40 guests, including investors, journalists, key opinion leaders, representatives from the Japanese embassy, and Japanese food companies based in Israel. The event marked the first official tasting of 4C's cultured freshwater eel.
We are very exciting today because we are meeting here at 4C with their first end product that they did in the lab. They started in the lab by growing the cultivated seafood, and today we are here tasting it, and it's amazing. After a journey of 2 years, I'm very happy for them and happy to be here.
4C Foods employs a groundbreaking method using organoid technology to cultivate fish tissues outside their natural habitats. Bypassing the need for scaffolding and reducing reliance on costly growth factors, 4C's approach is not only scalable but also aims to achieve price parity with traditional aqua-farmed eel meat. This is crucial as wild eel populations dwindle due to overfishing and aquafarming remains challenging.
We are hosting our guests in the A restaurant, a very reputable restaurant here in Tel Aviv. Today, we are making our first step to give the general audience a taste from the future.
On the menu were 3 exquisite dishes, with the highlight being 4C's cell-cultivated unagi kabayaki, grilled eel served on a bed of aromatic rice. This traditional Japanese dish took center stage, embodying the company's mission to save wild eel populations and other species at risk.
And we are so much, excited and thrilled and impressed by the quality, of this cell-cultured, very fast one, eel meat.
Guests at the event experienced the rich flavor and tender texture of 4C's cultured eel, which is free from pollutants and highly sustainable, protecting aquatic environments and their inhabitants.
Let's take a look at the weather forecast. Mostly clear skies are expected tonight around the country, with temperatures reaching lows of around 20 degrees Celsius or 69 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow, partly cloudy skies are expected alongside warm temperatures set to reach highs of about 35 degrees Celsius or 95 degrees Fahrenheit. That's all for today's news. For more updates from Israel on all your devices, check out our ILTV channels, subscribe to the ILTV newsletter, and don't forget to check out our website, iltv.tv, with all the latest news from the heart of the State of Israel. I'm Emily Schrader. Be well, and thank you so much for watching.